Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. All right. Just double check we're good on LinkedIn. And yep. All right. We're going to go ahead and kick things off. Welcome, everyone. This is Jason from Thunder.vc. Hosting today, Nick Domino, expert in helping people identify the best path for both their benefits and financial wellness, amongst many other amazing attributes that Nick Domino has. I've known Nick for many years. He's helped my past companies identify where we have cost-saving opportunities from our HR cost, also taking a huge lift off founders or executives that are dealing with, HR responsibilities in terms of whether it's selecting benefits, passing down, employee, documents that have to come down to employees, compliance requirements, and various other aspects that really you don't want to be dealing with as a founder. But when you're too small of a company, you haven't really been able to justify bringing on someone that's dedicated to it. There's, amazing solutions out there that Nick's going to be able to walk us through in terms of how that all works and why you want to take that into consideration when scaling your organization from just you and the founders to bringing on W-2 employees to take your company to the next level, whether you're remote or in person. But that all said, Nick, I'd love for you to kind of introduce yourself and kind of take it from here.
Certainly. Thank you, Jason. And yes, I've had the pleasure of working with Jason through a number of his various companies. And further, I would say that one of the things that Jason and I really synergize on the most is that we tend to pick up the phone and call each other on various ideas. I think we both like the way each other thinks. Obviously, Jason at Thunder gets to see a plethora of different companies. And likewise, myself running employee benefits for a number of different companies across the US, I see all the interesting ways, all the interesting ideas and ways that people make money in this world, and and plenty of long-standing companies and new burgeoning companies as well. I've been in this business essentially my entire life. I am the third generation in a family firm that has been doing employee benefits, tax planning and mitigation, and overall financial planning for quite some time now. I always say that while I've always been fiercely entrepreneurial, I realized that I have a certain skill set, and I kind of knew all the words to the employee benefit planning space. It's kind of like knowing the words to a song, right? One you haven't heard in years and years and years. I remember when I got to college, right, you hear like Jack and Diane, and even though you had never listened to it in your adult life at that point, you kind of know all the words. So similarly, I'm oddly very passionate about this space. And I see all these different companies go and raise funds on Thunder or constantly be asking myself and other of my friends for checks. And then you see them go burn it on this on very, very unintelligent things, such as mispaying for employee benefits. So what are we going to talk about today? First, I'm always one to, I don't like hiding the punch, right? If there's only one thing to get from this presentation, it's going to be the very, very, very first thing we talk about. We're going to talk about growing pains of companies of different sizes. What is a PEO, a professional employer organization? I'm pretty sure nearly every single company that is on the Thunder platform should be using a PEO of some sort, unless you're a VC. Then you should be creating your own master PEO and using something called a PEP plan. We're not going to talk about that today, but the companies that people are investing in should almost all be using PEOs, but they should know the difference between the insurance providers and professional employer organizations. Who are the players? We're going to talk about how not to get ripped off and other common issues people stumble upon so we can know what to expect down the line, particularly as our company grows in size along the way. So, most important thing, do not try and do your benefits yourself. Most importantly, do not reach out to the PEO or the insurance company yourself. There's a very good reason for that. Economies of scale, the fact that all of these products are state filed, so you're not necessarily even saving anything going directly to them, and there are other educational benefits that come along with using a broker or something called a BGA as well. And we're going to get into that. But first, let's talk about companies of different sizes. So as companies grow, plenty of companies on the Thunder platform start with somewhere between 1 to 10 employees. Is that about right, Jason?
Yeah, I would say it's usually just the founders, or they've raised a little bit of money and they're around the 10 to 20 mark.
And one of the big value adds that Thunder gives is that it's silly that if you have, just the founders or maybe a few employees, it's a very, very poor use of time for those key employees and those super motivated employees to be going out and fundraising all the time. Would you agree with that, Jason? That's really one of the core deliverables of using Thunder.
100%.
Because not only does a company with 1 to 10 employees have a lack of resources, they definitely have a lack of time, and they definitely have a lack of funding, and they don't want to be using that time to be finding funding. Further, they're usually very overworked. The last thing anybody wants to deal with the majority of the time, particularly the mindset it takes to found a company or to be one of the first employees at a company, is to deal with all of the administrative or legislative issues that come with having employees. So a lot of companies either don't have many HR benefits to start with, they have no HR department, or the founder or employee number 4 is in charge of all the benefits. So would you say that? So that's a pretty common approach. I'm sure that many of the companies that are listening to this probably can. It will resonate with them. So when you are that size, typically somebody sees some type of advertisement and they'll reach right out to a professional employer organization or to an insurance company. They're told they need to run payroll. They'll reach out to a payroll company. There's a better order of operations for that, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But then we'll see companies grow and grow and grow, and they'll have their HR benefits. They'll have some sort of resource they utilize for their growing company. But from 10 to 50 employees, the benefit crunch and challenge that companies run into suddenly morphs into something completely different. Frequently, you've been using this legacy system, and now all of the costs every single month, the per employee cost, is really starting to tally up. And further, you have FICA tax, COBRA, health insurance, unemployment. You've probably had employees that you've had to fire. If you don't do the proper planning, or if you try and take an inefficient route when you're 1 to 10 employees in size, that problem only becomes larger 10 to 50 employees. And typically what we see is when companies start to get 10 to 50 employees, they're hit with their first lawsuit. And it's usually something that was very, very avoidable if they had the right HR benefits practices in place, whether that's paying the right wage and hour tax, whether it's making sure unemployment to every single state is correct. And frequently companies are frustrated at this point that they're having to pay fees that they don't see as necessarily justified, or that they're getting hit with these kind of frivolous lawsuits. But because not everything was buttoned up when there are 1 to 10 employees in size, they have no choice but to settle along the way for 10 to 50 employees. And then finally, on the health insurance side in particular, once somebody grows to 50 to 100 employees, they're still not out of the weeds when it comes to the size and problems that they face with health insurance, particularly in New York State and California. We're going to get into something called community-based pricing for health insurance in a second. And all the other states in the US right now, you can have better pricing once you're above 50 employees in size. But if you are domiciled in either New York or California, you still will have very inefficient pricing models, even when you're at 50 employees to 100 employees. Once you're above 100 employees, you can have access to more favorable health insurance pricing again. So we talked about health insurance. Let's get into health insurance, because that's really the need that drives the beginning of most people's quest for benefits, right? Usually people want, where people start is they either need a payroll system to take care of the legislative needs for workers' comp. And then suddenly, you know, maybe it's 1, 2 employees, somebody's on their spouse's coverage. But once they grow in size to 6 employees, 4 employees, suddenly they need to go out and get better benefit packages to retain and attract talent. So a lot of times people will go direct. So when you go and get health insurance, anybody that's gone to try and get health insurance for their employee set in the past probably know that you go to you either go to an insurance provider directly or you go to a professional employer organization. Why would you go to either one? Well, I talked about the idea of community-based pricing. Pretty much in any state in the US, if you have less than 50 employees, some states are 25, but if you have less than 50 employees, part of the Affordable Care Act a few years ago was that insurance companies cannot discriminate against employees with existing health conditions. Now, not being able to discriminate sounds like a really good thing, right? That should be a good thing, but what that means for you as an employer is that it's actually a bad thing, because suddenly, if you have less than 25 employees, every single 43-year-old male, regardless of their health status, gets the same exact price from the health insurance companies. Now, that's actually a bad thing because they're not going to give you the best price, right? They're going to assume they take a blended average. If somebody's a smoker, if somebody's a diabetic, they're going to take a blended average across the entire state. And probably your employee representation probably doesn't look like the blended average across the entire state. So you're likely going to be paying more for your health insurance coverage if you go to the community-based pricing models that are filed on a state-by-state basis. So on the left-hand side of this page are a lot of, here we go. The left-hand side of this page are a lot of insurance providers, Cigna, Anthem. Those are the underlying health insurance companies. And if you go directly to them, first of all, you need a broker to go directly to them, but you're going to be pulled into the prices as if you have only 3 employees, meaning you are going to have a community-based pricing. However, if you go to the right-hand side of the page, a professional employer organization, you are going to be pooling your resources together. And instead of only having 3 employees, what's going to happen is you're going to join essentially almost a union, or you're going to join an organization. And you, instead of hiring those 3 employees yourself, you're going to lease those 3 employees from the professional employer organization. And the benefit of that is, instead of paying those high community-based pricing models, you suddenly are part of a pool of 10,000 employees, 100,000 employees, 50,000 employees. So suddenly, using the economies of scale, your average price drops significantly. It's not uncommon for us to bring employers of 10 and under or 15 and under and save them 60% of what they would have paid going directly to the market. Obviously, when we are, fundraising, and plenty companies are even pre-revenue at this point, controlling our burn as much as possible and saving 60% to one of our highest line item costs is incredibly helpful. Now, while most people come to a PEO for employee benefits in here, PEOs also offer a myriad of other benefits, from payroll to HR management to compliance, immigration needs, safety risks, HR strategy. They're honestly terrible at retirement plans, so I wouldn't use them for that. Workers' compensation. A PEO will go and do all of those things for you while saving you a significant amount on your health insurance.
And I want to add on to that. That was, like, I would say, the biggest value add, because you kind of come for the discount on benefits as a company. That's kind of what lures you in. But when we were hiring and making offers to, deal with H-1B1 or trying to sponsor green cards as we were scaling and raising more money, it was just so nice to just be like, hey, here's the employee, here's what they need, go. And just like not have that, we still had to fill out, provide documents and like supply the work, but we were not the one project managing. They had a really competitive pricing on, anything that was beyond the scope of the work. And it was so nice to kind of be able to take that burden off of our plate, but still give that employee the benefit that they were looking for and what they needed to be a part of the team. Because if we didn't have those benefits, they probably wouldn't be with us. As much as they love the mission, as much as they want to be a part for, along for the ride and, buy into what you're doing, like they still need to feed their families. They still need to put food on the table. They still need to have healthcare. Some people have amazing talent, but they might have, certain health disabilities or other things that, hold them back that you might not be aware of as a founder or a CEO.
And you can't ask, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You can't ask, hey, by the way, what medical problems do you have, and how much does this really matter to you?
Exactly, and that's other sensitive things that founders, you could be shooting yourself in the foot dramatically or opening yourself up to a lawsuit if you don't have these practices implemented. And doing it from scratch, and you've never done it before, is not attainable for most. Or you think about hiring an expert, but you're going to be paying an executive level salary for someone to come in and do that stuff. And that cost alone will cost more than what it will take to bring in a PEO, to which that person who's probably smart enough to bring in a PEO themselves to do this, to do the work.
Completely. And you talked about opening yourself to lawsuit. That's one of the biggest things, right? So we are, as a nation, we care a tremendous amount about discrimination now, right? Which is good and important. Where does all discrimination start from? All the legislation and all of the precedent that comes for all those lawsuits comes from the ERISA language, which was the ERISA Act of 1983, and all the discrimination case law comes from there, and it's all around workers' comp, and it's all around fair employment practices, particularly around how we treat retirement plans, how we treat the firing of employees. And even if you think you're in compliance, I mean, the thing, it changes every single month. You do not want to be paying somebody full-time to do this. If you're going to a PEO, if it's not unlikely that you're paying $150 a head if you go directly. We're going to get to what you pay if you don't go directly in a minute. But so this is why people go to a PEO. And as Jason said, he's seen all the different companies that we help bring to a PEO and can help save on these costs tremendously. Now, it's important to understand, I'm not a PEO, right? I'm not a professional employer organization. I always find it's helpful to understand who the players in the room are, right? So who is who? So a broker is a licensed broker. Typically, brokers have to have a health insurance license, an insurance license, a number of different things. And brokers get compensated as part of the state filed rates for whatever health insurance plan you have on the books. Now, that would be true if you had more than 50 employees and you're in the state of New Jersey, so you were past the community pricing ratings and we went directly to United Oxford. So for example, we would be the broker on that case, myself and my company, Associated Benefit Consultants. Now, a broker is not mandatory, but it's at no extra cost to you because there's commission. These are state filed products. There's commission baked into these products, no matter how you obtain that, right? The United Healthcare literally files the package with the state every single year, and they have a mandated amount of commission that's in there. There's some wiggle room on price for the end consumer a little bit, but the broker's like commission side is already baked in there. So plenty of people make this mistake of trying to bypass the broker or the BGA, which is the broker general agent. So a broker can be there, doesn't have to be there. A brokerage general agent would be so I would be the individual broker. A company such as Associated Benefit or Acrisure is a brokerage general agent. So a brokerage general agent is always there. You normally just don't see them. And I made the difference. I said, if we had 50 employees, we might go directly to United Healthcare and get a better price, right? Well, if we have under 50 employees or we have 10 or under 10 employees, we're going to go directly to a professional employer organization because we're going to use those economies of scale. A PEO is a BG. It can act as a BGA. This is very important to understand because while you get while you'll still get the same United Oxford health insurance plan and will usually save you a fair amount on the cost, it is very, very, very important to understand that you do not want to call the PEO directly yourself. Why? Because a broker and a brokerage general agent can use our economies of scale, and we already have pre-negotiated rates with all of these PEOs, with TriNet, with JustWorks, with ADP. I remember, I think there was a company I think I worked on with Jason a while ago that they thought they had a great deal from TriNet. They said, oh, we normally charge, $200 a head. We'll get you down to $150. Well, if you come to us first, we can get you for $90 a head, depending if you're in the right target market size. But they're never going to give you that $90 a head price, because we have thousands and thousands and thousands of companies with TriNet. Myself as a broker has hundreds and hundreds. The BGA I work with has hundreds of thousands. However, if you call TriNet first because they are a master BGA themselves, you cannot get the better pricing without leaving them. That's really important to understand. So if you come in with the price thinking you did great at $150, then you called us to help on the 401k side, we see what you're paying per employee per month, which is $150 per employee per month. Oh, he said, look, we can save you another $60, but unfortunately, because you called TriNet directly, we actually can't save you that. And you can't, and they will never change that price unless you go to a different PEO and come back. And the administrative hassle in doing that can be quite high. So if there's one important takeaway, this goes back to don't do it yourself, right? That you will pay less and get other benefits from contacting a broker or a master broker first.
So I'm a victim of the DIY to then learning the right way. From the previous company to then the next company where we brought you in on the cost savings. And, when you have 50, 60 employees and you're saving 50, 60 bucks a month and getting better options, it's a pretty substantial amount of savings. And to which people think brokers like, oh, the middleman, they take a fee, like real estate agents and stuff like that. But in this case, there's no additional money out of your pocket. You're acting like if you're buying a house, there's no money out of pocket for you by, working with an agent. That's similar to this situation where it's coming out of the seller's, proceeds. It's already baked in. It's expected. So you're either going to give that firm more margin and get nothing in return for yourself, or you crunch their margin, pass on savings to you, and get the additional benefits that come with just working with an expert that can navigate through the system. And so that's going to be on your side. So if anything comes up, any kind of disgruntled issues with the PEO, you have at least someone to kind of tap the shoulder of and kind of resolve any particular issues, or at least get an opinion on.
You're completely correct there, Jason. And I think that one thing that's really helpful to let's get into the psyche of many founders, right? We want to do it ourselves, right? We want it. We're like, no, you know what? There has to be a smarter way to do this. I mean, look, so many founders really emulate a lot of our big Tesla fans, right? Why? Because Elon says, you know what? Now there has to be a smarter way to do this. And most people think doing it themselves is the smarter way. They can cut out that middleman, but that's the opposite here. And part of the reason for that is because of the economies of scale, right? That any football fans know that if you're a Steelers fan, there was Heinz Field, which was named as the Steelers for a long time. Acrisure is the BGA that I write with the most, and they literally have a football stadium named after that, right? I mean, they bought the rights to that, and every single they have the most competitive rates with all the PEOs. So instead of you using your 5 employees, Acrisure is using their, I don't know, 5 million employees that they have across all the various PEOs. So they are using that to negotiate more preferential rates across the board. Now, further, Jason talked a little bit about the idea of having somebody that's in your corner as well. So remember this infographic or this little diagram a minute ago, broker BGA, Associated Benefit Consultants, my company. I work with a lot of different providers, a lot of different companies within the Acrisure domain. So I go and I make sure that I am actively there and CC'd on all the emails for any type of HR problem that any founder or their chief compliance person in-house or just their designated appointee has. And I make sure that I find the right Acrisure partner to bring them to, based on the size that they are, based on where they are within the country. And I make sure there is somebody for them that gets back to them very quickly. And if somebody doesn't get back to them within 24 hours, we go and we make sure that the Acrisure partner, that we might replace them with a different one. Or we're going to make sure that you get the loving attention that you need. Yet again, none of this comes as an extra cost to you because all of it's already baked in to the pre-negotiated rates with the PEO providers. The PEO pays Acrisure, Acrisure pays a small portion of that to us. We then go and give additional educational resources above and beyond to all the employees of that company if they choose to actually, if they want those additional resources. So when you think, and there's no way to cut out the middleman, right? Like we think of with real estate. If anything, using the real estate example, when you go to, if you're a real estate agent, is also the same agent that is the one listing the property. Sometimes they'll say, you know what, in order to get this done, instead of the usual 6%, we'll bring it down to 4% and we'll cut 2% off the purchase price. That's exactly what's happening here. And it's important to know that while there are a lot of really big PEOs out there, professional employer organizations, there are actually 600 across the entire country. And yes, Paychex, TriNet, ADP, JustWorks are some of the largest. They're the ones that advertise the most. They're the flashiest, but you don't necessarily want flash necessarily. Some do, but some of the ones that grow the most actually suck the most, right? Because they have very, very rigid structures and rules. Further, a PEO can kick you out very easily. Why would they kick you out? They would kick you out if your workers' compensation bill gets particularly high. Why? Because workers' compensation is usually 100% cost to them. So there are different ways that we can mitigate that, or there are different PEOs to bring you to. And frequently there are some smaller regional PEOs that will be better for certain companies, not all of them. But we work with of the 600 PEOs across the country, we work with a good 500 of them. So the other 100 are like trash. but it's important to kind of hopefully this is helpful to understand some of the players within the PEO space. Now, when people look to join a PEO, so instead of with people who are moving to a PEO, let's say that they've done their own taxes for a little while. They use Gusto. Gusto's a payroll provider. If it's not a PEO, almost all PEOs give the option to also run payroll. Most PEOs are payroll providers on steroids. Certain payroll providers like ADP take a percentage of your total payroll. That's good when you might pay less for that when you have 1 to 5 employees. If you stay with ADP later on and you forgot to take a percentage of your total payroll, that's going to cost a lot more when you're 60 employees. Having somebody like us that's looking after that and moving you from place to place as your company grows at no further cost to yourself is one of the keys to success. Actually, Jason and I have a joint other friend that his business started with TriNet years and years and years ago. I remember showing him that he didn't even realize that when he grew from 20 employees to 50 employees to 500 employees, how much he was paying per head. They never renegotiated that pricing model along the way. And as I said, the only way for them to get to renegotiate that pricing model was to leave and go to a different one and then move back to TriNet down the road. But here are some other common things that people stumble upon in the PEO process. Is that if you switch for a PEO to a PEO in the middle of the year, you'll have a tax reset. So if you've never run a company before and suddenly that's your first time, or if you run multiple companies, hopefully you don't even realize that you have SUTA, your state unemployment tax assessment. If you move in the middle of the year, your SUTA gets reset. SUTAs have cap limits. So if you've already paid the first 7 months of your SUTA, you're going to get reset, and it might actually be more expensive for you to switch at that time. Once again, that's an assessment that we can easily do for you. Now, just in 2020, your FUTA, your federal unemployment tax assessment, does not get reset. So, as I said, there's a little bit of calculus to do here, but people don't necessarily realize that and frequently they don't even notice that it might be inefficient. They might end up paying another $4,000 in tax that they didn't need to pay. And those are some little things that we try and help with to make sure that the timing for these moves is correct. The type of so another thing people don't realize is that you can actually get kicked off of PEOs. All right, so you can get kicked off of PEOs if you have somebody that has let's say you have 4 employees and 2 of them have health costs you don't know about. Well, suddenly, if you're too high of a cost to the PEO company and you're raising the rates across the board, if they put you in a certain health class bucket that they think you're going to fall into, well, if you're going to raise the cost too much, they're going to jack your rates up the next year, and they're going to ask you to leave. They're going to force you out. They can't tell you to leave. They're going to raise your premium so high that you'll want to leave. Now, there's some strategies for that. If you do some careful planning beforehand, we can lock in longer contracts than a year. Or we can go to other carriers that naturally will put you in a higher bucket to start with or a lower bucket to start with, and won't play these pricing games, because moving PEOs can be distracting, right? It's the same exact reason why you don't want to move, why you're utilizing Thunder to not do your own fundraising. Your time is valuable. You don't want to walk everybody through a new enrollment. You don't want everybody to have to put in their new Social Security information, their payroll deferral compensation numbers, whether or not they want pet insurance, right? All of these things, you don't want your employees spending time doing that. You'd rather have them be building your core product and solving the issues that you need to and go and hitting clients. Now, while
I do want to kind of just reemphasize on the founder side, like Your investors don't expect you to be an HR expert. There is zero value in you learning what it takes to be good at HR when you're expected to innovate and scale a company. And it's in your best interest to outsource this type of work to experts that already have the knowledge, the resources, the tools to take care of this. Now you need to follow and you need to listen to them, because again, going back to compliance, avoiding lawsuits, and making sure you know what's going on, but you should not necessarily be executing across these things. And it will detract you from your core competencies. And it's just the unsexy part of running a business that, even if you learn how to do it yourself, it's not going to improve your business. Growing sales, finding investors, raising capital, solving product problems, technology problems, logistic problems. That's where your time is going to be better spent, and not necessarily, this type of stuff.
Completely. And this part of the slide is sort of built for a company that's maybe 40 to 70 employees or 40 to 80 employees, which I know we're not talking about here. This one right here is, if we move to a PEO, sometimes we can fire that HR person, right? Try to not say that in the meeting with the HR person, but sometimes we can fire the HR person, which if we do the calculus, look, sometimes we can go and save, if their salary is 120K a year, we can make up that cost pretty quickly. But this next point does apply to companies of 10 employees and under. It does not mean that we don't need any HR person, or more specifically, we still need somebody that's designated to reply to things. And I would say choosing this person is there's an important kind of trick to choosing this person. If anybody has gone and created a will for themselves, that a lawyer is going to walk you through what all the roles are, right? Who's the guardian of your child? Who's your healthcare proxy? One of the other things they're going to ask you is, who is the executor of your will? Now, this doesn't mean which sibling of yours do you like the most, right? This means who is the best at following directions. That's the same exact person here. Who is the best at your company in following directions and executing on things quickly and responding quickly? So that is who to select for the role to be the communication person with us and the PEO company, because we're going to do the majority of the work, right? Ourselves and the PEO is going to do the majority of the work, but we still need information from you sometimes, right? We need an employee census. We need to know when people started the company, right? So that even though suddenly that person will go from doing that full-time or to maybe 10 minutes a week, right? But we still need some type of contact person there. Now, what we've talked about PEOs being very good for smaller companies, but it's not all rainbows, right? Why do people move away from PEOs? Because you do pay a per employee cost per month. And as you said, when you have 60 employees paying $150 a month, so that number can add up pretty quickly. And suddenly then going and breaking these pieces out yourself later on can actually be more cost efficient again. But if you can approach the PEO the right way to begin with, and suddenly that cost is $90 a month or $100 a month, then that's a pretty manageable bill to swallow. And it's certainly, if we look at a time cost trade-off, usually a very good trade-off of time. Another thing is, not all companies are eligible for PEOs. A machine parts manufacturing company, probably not going to be eligible for a PEO. Why? Because, as I said, workers' compensation is one of the biggest driving costs that preclude people from PEOs. Workers' comp is really expensive for people that are sticking their hand in and out of large metal presses every single day. A mold remediation company, going to be pretty expensive for a PEO, because they don't want to take on that risk if you're around hazardous materials all the time. So a PEO might not be a good fit for that type of company. There are plenty of companies that aren't good fits for PEOs. and then navigating the scene in the right way to find the best next option that's yet again where we can come in. So when we talk about having somebody that's still around, so before we get to how we come in and how we help, kind of a quick throwaway I want to put in there is fractional HR people are incredibly helpful. If you're going to fire your HR person, if you don't have an HR person, Stephanie is somebody that we've used in the past, and she's done great by our clients. Find your own fractional HR consultant, but fractional HR consultants are really incredibly helpful because they outsource all of those to-dos. They're the ones that can go and get the employee census, and you don't even need to have somebody that takes that, that 10 minutes a week, because really it is more than 10 minutes a week when you're first starting out. And they'll help with cost savings, flexibility, objectivity. They can be very, very helpful. But let's say somebody wants to look at, they've thought for a while they need to install employee benefits. They have employees that they need for health insurance or a 401k plan. What do we need? We need a census to do that. We need a medical renewal if you already have health insurance coverage. And we need your most recent invoices. And again, as I said, we need an employee that can read, understand, and respond to emails, right? Like, it's surprising sometimes how hard that last one is to come by. So that's what some of the that's how we work. That's as we said, as I said with Jason, we've had plenty of history of helping plenty of companies, again, not being a cost, but really being a benefit. There are some growing pains, particularly for companies in New York and California. If you are located in either one of those states, you would be absolutely crazy to not be using a PEO. Why? Because there are so many legislative risks. I mean, if you try and fire anybody in either one of those states, I'd be really impressed if you got through firing 15 people and you never got hit with a lawsuit. Right? I mean, even hiring childcare in one of those states is incredibly dangerous. You just open yourself up to so much. And by the way, this is a really important part of the PEO. If you want to fire somebody, you can actually pick up the phone, tell your PEO company, hey, I want to fire this person. I don't know how to do it. They'll go and fire them for you. They'll find a reason.
Yeah, we had to do that. I think Liquid Sky, I think we did that probably we had a couple individual firings, and then we had layoffs, and we consulted them all throughout the way to kind of make sure we covered our own ass, because that is something that you do not want to deal with, especially we were in New York. There's a lot of strict, rules and compliance and stuff like that. And we didn't want to make sure, and we were hiring, or firing people both of protected classes and not. And so there's just a lot of nuance that you want to make sure that you're protected. You don't want to just go on a whim and make a potential massive mistake, because again, where we come in with Thunder, we're all about helping you raise money. And if you can't really raise money if you got an employee lawsuit on your hands, no VC wants to touch you in those situations. You either have to resolve it or not let it happen to begin with.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that side. That you're right. Raising money when you have pending litigation against you is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, so and that's one of the first things that comes up in a DD. That's just it's a casual question that just check a box. Oh, do you have any litigation or potential lawsuits against you? And if you say no and you actually have something, your deal's dead. It's just you're burnt and you won't be able to get anywhere. If you do have something, be honest, but you're going to be on pause until it's resolved. And then there's going to be a strong sense of hesitancy, because it's going to make you look like you don't know how to run and protect your organization. Especially because you're dealing with early stage stuff. It shouldn't be something you experience, until you're Series A plus, to reach some kind of scale, but still something you don't want to risk.
And it shouldn't be something you experience, but unfortunately, the way that the employment law is written in New York and California in particular, there are plenty of people that are very experienced in filing these lawsuits. And there are people that just file frivolous lawsuits knowing you have no choice but to settle. And if you utilize a professional employer organization and you call them to help them, you fire them. Remember, you're leasing this employee from that organization, so they have a vested interest to make sure that you fire them correctly. So they're going to help, and they're going to make sure that you're all buttoned up when you go and fire that person. Further, every single company in both of these states needs to have an employee handbook. In most states, you need to have an employee handbook. Nearly every single PEO has a pre-made employee handbook that just automatically dumps your information in. That by itself would probably cost you, $2,000 on Fiverr. So you can. There are plenty of cost-saving metrics within here, and this is hopefully this presentation has been helpful. I know we're going to open up to some questions, but maybe I was so thorough that people don't even have questions.
We'll see what comes in, but I just think this is something that I really wanted this to be a topic for founders, because it's something that they just completely write off or don't acknowledge until it's a problem, or when they need to go out and hire. Like, your job is to retain and attract and retain talent as a CEO and as a founder. And as awesome as you are, sometimes people just need some basic benefits. And if you don't have once you try to scramble and put those together, fortunately PEOs make it a lot faster, more efficient to do it. But it's just something that I think blindsides a lot of founders, and until they got to actually deal with it. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to bring you on, Nick, to kind of help preemptively prepare them to tackle a solution like this and get them warmed up to the thought of what they have to do.
And when you do it, most people think, oh, I saw that ad on for I know ADP's a large company and I've seen their ads. Do not call them directly, right? You'll be paying $60 more an employee a month for however long you are with that PEO or however long you're in business, right? You don't want to have that increased cost every single month. And we all know that when we go and try and sell a company, our monthly costs get multiplied, right? We want to make sure that when we're planning for an exit as well, that we are taking smart moves years and years prior to get there.
Awesome. Well, I found this information super insightful, and I'm glad we got to get this out there. And we're going to be posting this on our blog and our LinkedIn for founders to access. And really appreciate your time and expertise, Nick, for joining and sharing this information. With that said, you got your information here. We'll also include that, on the blog itself for anyone that wants to get in contact. Because again, it's just pick up the phone and call, because it's something that you just don't want to get caught up in all the negatives that Nick's already brought up. And I know it sounds like salesy and whatever, but no, this is genuinely in your best interest to just have someone else deal with it and take care of it for you, because you're going to save more, you're going to get more, and you're not going to have to stress about it. Because again, this is not a founder's core competency or expertise. This is the easiest thing to outsource. That is probably the highest yield, lowest cost effort for once you're a scaling organization and bringing on multiple employees. But again, Nick, thank you so much. Appreciate you to join it.
Thanks for having me, Jason. And thanks for letting me be part of helping some of the companies on Thunder grow.